And we're live. It said 17 seconds, man. We were 17 seconds behind, man. Wow.
Wow, dude, we should have went live sooner. 17 seconds sooner. We owe you
17
guys
seconds.
17 seconds in overtime.
That sucks. Man, so how you been? Good?
I've been doing all right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got was trading out some throttle bodies on the T-Bird, ones with injectors. So now we're going to go some denser charge air cooling directly below the throttle blades on that tunnel ram setup and see what we can squeak out with some extra injector and some charge cooling.
Awesome.
Yeah, but I did run into a problem though. The linkages were cut off because these are used throttle bodies. So I'm just going to have to borrow from Peter to pay Paul, and then rob some linkages out of the other ones and drop them in there. So
All right. Well, I just added, there we go. Perfect. Mr. John Wilburn now is our mod guy. He's a mod guy now. Look at that.
sweet.
Right?
Yeah.
Open up my door there. There we go. Awesome. I had to close the door because it's we had the window. We actually have the windows open right now, and
It's nice out, right?
it's nice out. Yeah, we've had the AC off for a little while, and it's just nice out. And I've been driving the Lizard King, man. And before we get into it, let's go down our list and say hi to everyone. Okay.
Okay.
We got Fab Race Mod Repeat, Twisted Mopar Garage, got Slant Daily, we got Michael, we got Rick, we got Jay, we got Aaron, Bear Rose Garage, Mr. Wilburn, who a moderator now, and Colleen, Turbo, Tom, 416. That's the first time I've seen him. Maybe I've seen it before, but I just
Yeah,
don't
you
remember.
saw him at No Name Nationals. He had that early Ford. I want to say it's a Model A, but I don't know if that's even true.
Yeah. That thing was awesome. I think my kid loved that car the most. He was actually like climbing all over that thing. I was like, dude, get out of that car. You can't break it. You can't fix it. We got Kevin. We got Andy in here. We got one Neo Eon, whatever. Andy, NSB Custom Cars, and we got Mr. Wilburn's in here. Mr. Wilburn. We're gonna have. He got defeated today. I'm not gonna tell his story, but it's just, man, there's a starter that's just killing him right now. It's just, it engages and then just won't disengage. And it sounds as simple as putting some shims on it, small block Chevrolet. It's just
Who
not
is
doing
this?
it. This is Mr. Muscle Car Solutions.
Oh, Muscle Car Solutions. Okay.
Yeah. Mr. Wilson. That's him. I call him that. So that way he can keep his, anonymity, so people don't know who he is. So, but here's what I got going on. So I had the VRS carburetor on the old Lizard King there for a while, and I got some. I took it to the track, and I got some numbers on it, and mileage is right there. It's the same pretty much as pretty much anything else. And as far as eighth mile times, it's right there with everything else. Right there in the high tens. So it runs great. But and then I put it on the 2-barrel. I drove that for about half a week, and I said, you know what? I'm going to go back to my Edelbrock, the AVS style. I love that thing. It runs. It just keeps it nice and smooth. I did have some issues, and me and Dallas were talking about this. When it shifted, it would create a lean, and it would like kind of stumble. So then I was playing with it for the longest time. I was chasing this. It was all last year. And so then what I've been doing is I've just been raising the ship points. So on a Chrysler, it's real easy. You just adjust the cable on it. So, mine's a low car, but you can just adjust the rod. So I let it hold the shift longer. So that way it's about 500 RPM higher. Got rid of it, and it drives absolutely beautiful. So, yeah, it's
sweet.
amazing.
Yeah, well, I went down to the Gulf Coast for cruising the coast. And I took my son along, and we checked out the Southeast Gassers at Gulfport Dragway, which is always a good time if you get a chance to watch those things. They're getting to the point now. I think they're like the way fuel altereds were in like the late 60s, early 70s, to where you don't know where they're going to go anymore. They just got so much power, and the cars are geared so low that they do horrendously crazy wheel stands, which everyone already has seen before, but they're literally all over the place, up on 2 wheels, 3 wheels, 1 wheel, sideways down the track, while still trying to be the first one to the stripe, right? And they're fun and entertaining to watch, but man, there's always so many close calls. Yeah, there was a chick magnet almost got into the Joker, like mid-track, pretty much sideswipe each other.
That sucks.
Yeah, Andy says Sega on ice. Yeah, that's exactly what they're getting to be.
Here's a question for you right off the bat.
Hey guys, love watching your Tunnel Ram videos, Dallas. I'm in the process of restoring, modding a set of dual 600 Hollies for my Tunnel Ram. I'm having the choke horns milled off and then Cerakoted. Oh, okay. Well, that's the old school ticket right there.
Yeah, yeah. That's there's not too much I can talk about right now in tunnel rams, but I'm really excited about tunnel rams. So I'm telling you, I love tunnel rams. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, is anyone here going to be going to PRI or SEMA or anything like that? You should, if you are, you really should go and check out the Edelbrock booth. We got some really cool stuff this year. In fact, I was actually going through the release folder, and I can't really talk about it. We can talk about it after that, but after SEMA. But there's some really cool stuff in there. You guys are going to be digging it for real. It's going to be awesome. Awesome.
Andy says Tunnel Ram Mafia. Yeah, we're in the house. I'm going to get that T-Bird down to 5s before I put it up for the end of the year.
Yeah, so. Yeah. I believe you will too. Yeah, I've always been a fan of tunnel rams, but since I'm a small block Mopar guy, I could just never afford one. I couldn't afford 2 carburetors.
I just never had anything that had a tunnel ram that was made for it, right? Not until I started doing the Ford stuff. And it's like, oh wow, I totally forgot they had tunnel rams available. I can buy one.
Right? Yeah, for me to get a tunnel ram for a small block Mopar, you got to buy like new old stock, or some other similar.
Well, there was one. Wilburn picked one up at No Name Nationals. 2 Hacks Jeff brought it to him.
Yeah, no. I saw that, but I don't have anything that will accept that flange or that type of stock.
Well, you got
style.
W heads or something, right?
Well, I have the 360-1s, but this is my last go with the small block Mopars. Yeah, this is it. After this, I'm going Gen 3 Hemi, 100%. I
and
need
there's
a
tunnel rams available for those. There is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I saw a Holly High Ram.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna do something different.
Okay.
I'm gonna do something different. So, Tom Brown is saying, he is saying that he's trying to listen to the car, but the wind noise in the pipes are too loud. Sorry, guys. I'll have to catch with you later. Oh, okay. Awesome.
No problem.
Craig is asking, what would cause a 300 Ford not to fire on cylinder number 1? All the others are running.
Oh, that's not a good sign.
Yeah.
That is not a good sign.
Does it have spark? If it doesn't, that's the first thing you should check. Does it have spark? Spark plug good? If not,
do a compression test on it.
Then do a compression test on it. That's right.
And if it's got good compression, just start looking at water.
Yeah, exactly. And then do a leak down test. Most people don't do a leak down test anymore. Usually a compression test will kind of give you an idea. And then how I do a compression test, if I do a compression test and I think it's low, I'll shoot some oil in there. And if it doesn't change, then it's the valves. If it does change, it's the rings. It's that simple. Tunnel rams. Tunnel ram coming soon. I plead the 5th. Right here, he says, I have 2 Gen 3 Hemis floating around here. Can't wait to see what you do, Shane. Yes. Yeah. It's going to be good stuff. I'm switching
Amy
tunnel
says
rams.
he's switching the tunnel rams.
He's switching tunnel rams.
Yeah, he had a tunnel ram on the Hammerhead, on the mixed up Boss. And because the Hammerhead heads accept like all the basic Windsor stuff, I believe, and I think that's what he had on there. No, he had a 1994 like mine, so it might accept the Clevelands.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I don't know what he's going to change to. Maybe something more pro stockish.
Ooh, that'd be kind of cool because that stuff's a dime a dozen now.
Oh yeah, you can come across old pro stock stuff that's based on American engines, pretty cheap. Hey, did I tell you I scored a set of connecting rods for my next Buick 300 project that are NASCAR pieces?
No,
they are literally they're takeouts, but they've never been ran. But they're Pankel rods, 6.4 inches long, right? And I'm gonna like I said, I'm going to do a 300. It's an all-out 300.
That's awesome, dude. All out. All right. Michael Schmidt, Tech. Here we go. Tech, how is mid RPM with tunnel ram? It would seem like tunnel rams would only work at higher RPMs. Just wondering. Actually, I'll give my answer and then I'll let Mr. Dallas answer.
Okay.
Actually, a tunnel ram, because it's a longer runner, they actually work better for the lower and mid RPMs. That's actually where whenever you have a longer runner, it's going to make more power right off the boot, like right off the bat. Obviously, once you start tuning it for wavelengths and whatnot, obviously things are tuned. But the reason why a tunnel ram works better on the top end is because you have more airflow and with the double carbs and so on and so forth. But whenever you use a tunnel ram, you can always just think that it's going to basically make power everywhere. So you can essentially think 30 to 40 horsepower everywhere it's going to be. It's just going to create more area into the curve. All right, go for it. What do you got?
All right. Well, I was just going to say it in layman's terms, okay? A tunnel ram is nothing more than the cross ram intake manifold that Chrysler made for the 413s, like the Max Wedge stuff back in the early 60s. Instead of being laid down, they're just up on top, carburetors front and back.
Yeah.
That's really all it is. The longer the runner, the more torque it makes, right? So regardless of the configuration of it, it's going to make more torque. Well, and Shane and I talked about this pretty much during the No Name Nationals, because I was kind of wondering what was going to happen. Was it going to give up bottom end power? Should I fatten it up because it was more air? The whole 9 yards. And he's like, no, essentially with the longer runner, it's just going to create more torque everywhere in the power band. Okay. And then the horsepower is just going to be more horsepower everywhere in the power band.
Yeah.
So it's just like having your single plane only on steroids.
Yeah, because remember, you cannot measure horsepower. You can only measure torque. And then mathematically, with RPM and torque, that's how you get horsepower. So if you can create more torque and you can carry that torque longer in the RPM, you are going to generate more horsepower. It's just that simple. And that's exactly what a tunnel ram does. It just creates more torque.
My car went from running a 629 is where I had put it away, and then I put the tunnel ram set up on it, and off the trailer ran a 613 112.
Yeah.
Right, which it
Untuned.
gained 4 miles an hour. It was running a 629 at 108.
Running out of fuel, not a big enough injector. I mean, just everything. It's still more there.
Yeah, it was way happier. The only thing I did lose was the 60 foot, but we determined that's the fuel pump. The fuel pump it was actually on the suction side of the pump. The pre-filter had started getting plugged up with stuff that was in the fuel system, I guess, while it sat for 5 years.
Yeah. Andy says, I'm going with the Windsor High Ram that I've ported and butchered. It's going to be awesome. Yes, right. And Wilburn, me and him talked about this a little bit too, and he has 100% the point here. One of my daily drivers has a tunnel ram. The Honda CRV has a tunnel ram. That is correct. It's literally a long runnel with a single plenum, and it's a tunnel ram. Technically.
So Michael Schmidt says, okay, Tech, how is low RPM with a tunnel ram? Oh, no, I'm sorry. Wrong one. I was Mopar Man 1978. Speaking of tunnel rams, I like the dual spread bore tunnel ram of Tall John's Fun Shop one from Junker Up. I don't know how that one would work too well because, see, generally when you're looking spread bore carburetors, you're looking at quadrajet or thermoquad, and they're progressive linkage, right? So you'll be driving around in the front two barrels of both those carburetors, which would actually make the throttle response really well. Those two small front barrels, it'd have really good throttle response. But I don't know what happened when you opened up the gates of hell on the secondaries on both of those. Because, I mean, your vacuum would immediately drop. Yeah. And I think air would almost stagnate inside the plenum on that thing when you open them up. Yeah. It's just they're really big, and that's essentially that's the only downside of a spread bore is that the rear secondaries. That's why they were known for bogging so much, because it's so easy to bog one because you have so much surface area opening at one time. But Yeah, that'd be interesting to see. I don't know how that would work. The ones I'm using right now are not a progressive linkage setup. They're just directly connected, right? So they're all opening at the same time. I don't know how that would work with that progressive linkage on the Quadrajet or the Thermoquad.
Hey,
It'd be interesting to see.
Ron brings up a really good point here. Dallas, have you pulled that C4 for inspection yet?
No, I need to.
We talked about this, but
Well, and so my
wintertime.
idea was, okay, and I'll let the cat out of the bag. There's a guy here in the chat named Mr. Wood. He's let me in on a little known secret that he has a C4, and it's a pretty healthy C4, and we're gonna scavenge some parts off of it and cram it into my C4, but in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and just give this one hell because the only thing it's going to do is just flare up. I just hope it doesn't. I noticed it was when I shifted into high gear, the shift light would come on, and I'm assuming it was probably bouncing it off the rev limiter at maybe 8,000. But yeah, it needs to come out, and it's flaring up pretty good in high gear, and it's not happy with the extra horsepower from the tunnel ram. That's for sure.
Aaron's asking a question here. Tech, is the Dodge Magnum Kegger intake almost a tunnel ram? No, that's more of like a long runner, equal length long runner. It's designed for torque. If you were to, there's a few pictures of these people who've cut these open, and they just run a long runner and they run around. So they're just really designed for torque. Technically, you could call them a tunnel ram. Well, most of those are going to be a style of tunnel ram, like the 6.4, the new for the Gen 3 Hemi. That technically is a tunnel ram with an SRV on a short valve runner type thing. But it's not what we would think. It's a really long tunnel ram on those Carburetors style. Most of the tunnel rams are going to be like 6 or 7 inches, maybe 14 from where it transitions to the back of the valve. In that. And I know a little bit of numbers because I've kind of just been studying them. And most of those are 14 or 15 inches as far as just the intake themselves. So, yeah, there's that.
Beer Rose actually says, best thing about a tunnel ram is it has a common plenum where the cross ram doesn't, making tuning a lot easier.
That is correct.
Yeah. And, the neat thing about where you have that shared plenum where they both come together is that plenum volume is so large, right? That plenum volume is what makes horsepower, right? And it has how much air you have available, right? Now you can limit the things like if you have a small cylinder head, it'll actually start limiting it based on the cylinder head profile. But when you have a large plenum volume like that's the ticket. That's why when you went and looked at pro stock stuff from the 90s, they had a humongous plenum on them, right? Long runners, if you looked at them, they'd have like a V shape, and then the runners would be at the top of the V because it didn't matter. They wanted the biggest plenum they could possibly get with the longest runners they could possibly get.
That would fit under the hood or
right,
whatever, yeah. Inside the scoop. So, and Patrick is correct here. Technically, yes, you could call them a tunnel ram, but it's just like I said, most of them are going to be a tunnel ram because of their individual runner type deal. See here.
If you really want the extensive big picture of that, go look at the Ford EFI stuff from like the 90s, 80s and 90s on the trucks.
Yes.
They had that big, long upper plenum. And it was humongously long, right?
Yeah, and they had the big, long tubes on them, individual tubes.
Right.
Here, Mr. Wilburn's saying, what is he saying? I would think spreadbore is exactly the opposite of what tunnel ram would want. Besides not wanting a progressive linkage, you'll be pulling the barrels inward away from the intakes valves access. Yeah, because you would be, that thing would drop and then it would start spraying fuel, and you'd be spraying fuel at the back of if Chevrolet Mopar land, 8 and 7, and then you'd be that's where the big bore would be, and then you would have one at like say 3 and 4, so
and be super lean
everywhere else. That would I don't know. That would be something else.
Every now and then on Facebook, the picture surfaces of the quad. Did you ever see that? The Oldsmobile quad
Yeah, yeah,
with
yeah.
4 quadrajets. Um, and that thing surfaces and it boggles my mind. It's like, good Lord, I can only imagine that thing, it's 800 CFM times 4, so 3,200 CFM. Is there anything in the world that could use that much? No.
No,
Like it literally couldn't use all that.
no. And the thing is too is that you would have to jet those carburetors so fat because the signal's so low. That's the only way you get fuel into it, because the air going across the actual Venturi is going to be going so slow. There's no atomization of fuel. It
Right.
just
Well,
would
it'd be like
suck.
running a quadrajet. If you think about it, it's 4 of them on there, right?
Yeah,
So it'd be running a single quadrajet for 2 cylinders.
yeah. That's
You'd need some RPM out of that sucker. Well, the good thing is about the quadrajet, the secondary is only going to come open enough until it equals 0. So I'm
yeah,
assuming what's going to happen is when you get your quad, those secondaries are only open in like maybe a quarter of an inch.
yeah. Most of all parts from Russ is asking Mr. Dallas, was your intake converted to EFI? If so, by whom?
It was. I bought it as a original Pro Stock takeoff piece. It was actually for a AHRA. When they ran Pro Stock, they actually had nitrous small block versus big blocks in like the early 80s, 81, 2, 3. And when I got the intake manifold, it had a fogger system on it. And I took it off and promptly sold it and got nothing for it. And then I took it over to JBA, which is J Biddle Associates in San Diego. And I talked to them about plumbing it up, and they're like, "Yeah, no problem." And it was just like put 8 injector bungs in it, and then something to hold the rail, right? And that's really all you're looking at.
Yeah.
And they finished it all up, and he was like, "All right, it's like one custom intake coming up, $2,500." And I said, "Hold on a minute. There's not a custom intake. It was already cast. All you had to do is drill 8 holes in it
And weld.
and weld, right? I mean, it's not a custom intake manifold.
Yeah.
Let's be realistic." So they brought the price down to something a little bit more reasonable. But I had the one converted for my car originally that was a single plane intake manifold. And it used to be this guy he was on YouTube. Matter of fact, that's where I started getting into YouTube stuff, was a guy named Aaron at 6160.com, right? And he's like a fabricator, big time aircraft metal fabricator, and that's what he lives for. And he had put something on a YouTube channel about looking for intake manifolds to be converted to EFI, and he was happy to do them. So I contacted him when I was stationed in Australia, and I sent him that one. And he did such a fantastic job on that one. I sent him a Buick 351 that I had converted to EFI. And, back then was only, I want to say it was $600 an intake. So it wasn't like super expensive.
Yeah, that's not bad.
No.
That's not bad at all. Let's see. Can I use an aluminum intake on my 383 and my 69 Super B and still maintain the ram charger setup? I do have a stock 4-barrel intake on it. Can I use the aluminum intake and still maintain the ram charger setup? Ram charger. Maybe I'm missing the question here.
Maybe he's talking about the Ram Air setup, not Ram Charger. You know how, because the 69 Super B, don't they have that door that flips open with the shark teeth on it?
Yeah. You can, as long. Well, wait a second. It comes down to height. As long as the height is the same, then yes.
And the carburetor's got to be in the same location.
Carburetor's got to be in the same location. So, I wouldn't know that. Okay, I just couldn't read that. For some reason, Ram Charger.
Well, and I knew what you're thinking. Like, I was thinking Ram Charger too, like for a second. Then I started thinking, oh no, it's that Ram Air scoop that you pull up.
Right, a little sharky thing now.
Right, because that's what the B bodies had, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The Buicks have problems with this. Guys try to use the factory Ram Air setups with the factory air cleaner, and like the B4B Edelbrock, the carburetor is actually too far back and like a little bit too high.
Yeah.
And you literally have to cut up a $600 or $700 air cleaner and weld it back together to make it fit. Yeah. And what they found is the Edelbrock Performer, The reason why it didn't go away is it positions the carburetor in the exact right spot for you to use that air cleaner.
Oh, it's perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but there's no flow difference between the Performer and B4B, and guys are like, why are they still making both? Well, because one was for originally the B4B was designed for the Stage 2 Buick 455 package, and it came as the trunk option with the Buick. So when you got the Stage 2 heads in the trunk, and you got a B4B intake manifold and a Stage 2 camshaft and a set of 487 gears.
Yeah. Yeah. As long it will work as long as it's in the center, as long as it's the right height. I mean, you could probably fabricate something to make it work, but then like Dallas said, you'll probably be cutting up some stuff and
Expensive stuff.
Expensive stuff, very expensive stuff.
Irreplaceable stuff.
Yeah, that's funny. Fab Race is saying that it's not a renter. It's actually called an air grabber scoop
Air
on
grabber.
a Super B. Yeah,
Okay.
that's what it is. But yeah, same. Yeah, but yeah, they're right. So, you ever mess with here? Y'all ever mess with the Holly 3-barrel? Always thought it was a great concept. Yes, I actually have tuned a lot of those when I had my my chassis dyno shop in San Diego. The biggest problem we have with those is that the outer two ones do not have an accelerator pump. Now there was a place in Florida. This is early 2000s. There was a place in Florida that would put accelerator pumps in those. But you're messing up really expensive carburetors then at that point because they're basically work on vacuum. Other than that, once you come off of the low bog where the lean bog with those things opening, then they're great. They're kind of like a quadrojet at that point, when they bog. But other than that, they work great as far as wide open. Driving them around, you're really driving around on the center one. But when you open them up, it hauls ass. But there's a massive bog on them. You ever mess with the 6-pack style?
No, I haven't. The Holly 3-barrel is the one okay, that's legal for SIGA rules, right? And the Buick's rule of thumb is the bigger, the better. It doesn't matter. It's because the intake manifold is so poorly flowing and the cylinder head's poorly flowing that you put the biggest carburetor on it that you possibly can, and it eases up any restriction that you have. So they always perform better with a bigger carb, right? Now, I have been looking for one of those for a long time. Tony gave one away when we were on live one time, and I'm like, dude, I really wanted that carb. Why'd you give that thing away?
Oh, so this is a carburetor with 3 barrels on it.
Yeah. You've never seen that?
Oh, no. I thought he was talking about the 3-barrel like a Holly like.
Are you talking about the tri-power setup or a 6-pack
like
setup?
a 6-pack setup. That's what I was talking
No, this is
about.
a Holly 3-barrel. I don't know what the part number of it is, but it literally has your regular 4150 flange, and the front's a 2 round barrels, and then the back is one big freaking huge rectangular barrel, where it's like a giant oval. If you took both of those, the entire back 2 barrels have been merged into one big barrel, right? And it's it's like 1150 CFM or something. But I was wanting to use one of those. They're hard to come by, and they're kind of sought after now because there is nobody makes one, right?
Oh.
And the closest she gets to throttle bodies. Well, I guess there's a company that makes a single blade,
yes, I was just going to say
throttle body or a carburetor.
Yeah,
but you can't use it in nostalgia racing, right? But
yeah.
Michael Schmidt was asking, Dallas, did you give up on the small body Buick Special? No. What are you planning for that top level? I don't know what you mean by that, but I didn't give up on it. Life kind of just got in the way for me. Let's see. I really haven't touched much on it since November of last year. It's literally sitting in my garage. I was just talking to somebody about it today where it's got like a 1/4 inch thick of dust on it, right? But I found a floor for it. I'm probably going to go get it within the next couple of days. I don't know if I can afford it. We'll see. But I just it's not a floor for that car. I'm not going to buy that. No. I'm just going to go to the junkyard and I'm going to cut the floor out of a B-body and then a B-body GM, a big, huge, full-size boat, right? So I know I'm going to have more than enough transmission tunnel and floor pan pieces to piece this thing back together somewhat.
So we actually got a question here that Now he didn't really say what kind of engine this is, but can you get away? Can I get your take on running a solid roller setup on the street? Yes, I say go for it. Also, when in a small base circle cam required, it depends. If you're running a stroker, like say on a small block Chevrolet, then yes. Sometimes they need like a 950 base circle or 900, depending on if your rods are stroker clearanced or not. Oh yeah, on a stroker setup with low clearances. Some SR lifters came.
Solid roller.
Solid roller lifters
Yeah.
became available to me. Here's the thing, is that if you're going to run them now at Comp, I can tell you this right now, they have some of the best profiles out there. I used to work for another cam company, and then when I came to Comp, it was amazing to me as far as how they went about making their lobes and their profiles. So they have some really what they call soft or not spicy type of profiles. So you can get some really soft setups that are really easy. They cut down on harmonics, and you don't have to have crazy spring pressures because they're technically slow, but they're still going to be more aggressive than most flat tappets and or hydraulic rollers. And if your solid roller lifters became available, here's the thing: is that I would find some that first off have some sort of hippo oiling, some sort of oiling that's going to the wheels. And I would try to get as much oil to those as possible because anything that rolls is going to create heat. And whenever you think of the wheel, find the biggest wheel that you can get. So like most of them have an 800 diameter wheel, and let's just say the camshaft is going around at say at 3,000 RPM, that's 6,000. So the camshaft's going at 3,000. How fast is that wheel going at that speed? So if you're going down the road just cruising at 2,500, or let's just say 2,000, make the math easy, that's 1,000 RPM. How fast is that wheel spinning? You could do the math. It's really simple. But that's where you come down to. That's why I tell people that if you're going to do this, just get soft lobes. Call it Comp. They've got them. And then get some really good lifters that have some sort of hippo oiling on them. Now, whenever you're going to do some sort of hippo oiling, you're going to create a lot of windage because there's going to be a lot of oil going down on that cam.
Raining down.
Yeah, raining down. So it's not the greatest. So that's why hippo oiling has its purpose, but I don't typically like them in racing because in racing, there's going to be a fog of oil basically in the crankcase, and you're going to start it up, it's going to be running, the oil's going to be a little thicker, and it's going to go down the track, and then you're going to get off and you're going to shut off, and that's that. But when you have a solid roller on the street, you're going to be idling at a light for at least 3 or 4 minutes, sometimes 5, and then you're going to go to the next light, do that again, do the next light. So that's where you would need the hippo oiling, and you're going to just be, I would get some crank scrapers and things like that, but as far as running on the street, people do it all the time.
I'm going to look at it from the cheap man's point of view here, okay? Because Shane's talking about generally full race application on the street, okay, is what he's talking about. If you're the cheap guy like me and probably you and everybody else out there, right, that doesn't deal with high-end stuff every day on the phone from manufacturers, if you just got a set of solid roller lifters and you're like, okay, how can I use these? All right. I'm going to look at a camshaft. Well, one, small base circle cam, that's generally required when there's 2 things. Okay. Like Buick 350, they have a problem with just regular large flat tapping cams. Chevrolet small block doesn't normally become a problem until you start having a 383 stroker. Mm-hmm. Right. And then where it really becomes a problem is when you're running like aluminum rods with a 383 stroker. And that's because the rod is so much bigger. The journal is so much larger, right? That they got to cut the cam on a smaller base circle. Otherwise, there's interference problems between, it's not necessarily the rod itself. It's generally the rod bolt. And that's where or the side clearance right below the rod bolt will sometimes get into the camshaft, and that's where they grind you a small base circle cam that they literally just take 20 thousandths off of it or 40 thousandths off of it.
100 in some of them.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, well, and that just buys you just enough room for your rod to slide by there without nicking the camshaft, right? And that's because the cam and the crank were so close together because it was never intended to have that much stroke. Okay. But the things I like about the solid roller is a hydraulic roller is a solid roller. Okay. When the engine's running, it's filling up with oil, and it becomes a hydraulic cylinder. Okay, and you're not compressing that. I don't care who you are. You're not going to
It's got check
compress it.
valve at the bottom. It's got a little ball. It's a check valve.
The problem with the hydraulic roller lifter is it weighs a ton compared to a solid roller lifter.
Yep.
All right. So there's nothing wrong with you running a solid flat tappet roller on a hydraulic camshaft profile. It'll run just like the hydraulic flat tappet cam on the street, right? So if you bought, like, say you're building a Ford 302 and you decide, I'm just going to get a letter cam, you can throw that letter cam in there and run those solid roller lifters on it. It's not even going to be a problem. It'll never even notice it.
The only thing is, though, is if you do that, you have to lash it correctly, because, believe it or not, from advertised to 50 thousandths, a hydraulic is faster, where on a solid, from basically from advertised to 50, it's slower, because what they're doing is, it's on a hydraulic, because it has the hydraulic lock. It ramps in at the same at a speed, and it keeps that speed as fast as it can go. On a solid, because you have that clearance, what it does is it takes that clearance up and then exponentially ramps in faster, and that's kind of where you get all that harmonic,
Right.
because it just
Yeah,
takes
and the
slack.
hydraulic, it's already there.
Yeah.
Right?
So now, right now on my Slant 6, I have hydraulic profiles, and I'm running a solid flat tappet on it. But what you got to do is, instead of running them at 20 or 10 thousandths, because you're going to gain a lot of speed, because the hydraulic profile is that much technically faster
You got
on
to
the
tighten
lower
it up
end.
then, right?
You got to tighten them up, and that's where all these zero lash cams came from. All the newfangled thing is a zero lash cam, dude. All it is a hydraulic profile that you're putting a solid lifter on. That's all it is. If you're going to do that, just tighten up the lash until it doesn't make noise, or you can just call up your cam manufacturer, whoever it is, and they'll kind of tell you where it is, because they can kind of see where it ramps in, and then where it takes up the slack, and then where it goes in. And most of these will have that for like blowdown, or just taking it up, so that way it's just it cuts down on some of the harmonics, and as far as speed and the hit, let's call it, of the camshaft. So it's I call it like the little pendulum. It just takes some of the pendulum out of it.
Yeah, but you can definitely do that, and that's what I would do. Is I'd find a good, healthy hydraulic pattern that you could buy that's already available, because when you start looking at solid flat tappet profiles, they're already going to be pretty dang radical.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why most people move to them. But you
Yeah.
can put a hydraulic cam and a hydraulic roller cam with a hydraulic or with a solid roller lifter on there, and it'll be fine.
Yeah.
You just,
Yeah.
like you're saying, you got to take up some of that lash.
Just take up some of the lash. And like on my Slant 6 right now, I set it at, because it's a big tall engine. Slant 6 has got a big tall engine, and it's got like an 11-inch push rod in it. It's 6 and 8, but if I was running, like, say, a V8, it would probably be more on like the 4 and 6 numbers, just because of expansion of different things. But yeah, so there's when I say that, I mean 4 thousandths cold, 6 thousandths cold. Start it up, run it, get it to operating temperature, and then check that same one again, and just see how much it changed and closed up, or actually opens up at that point. So, all right, big block. Let's see where we're at.
All right, Stephen Meyer, is that what the one you're going to there? Big Block 402. I had a fuel pressure issue on candy cane for the last 8 weeks. Guess what? I installed a new gas cap. It's been vacuum locking when it warms up. Loosen the cap, now fixed.
That's funny, because that's actually what I did on mine. I bought a brand new locking cap for my 69 Dart, and it started locking up. I have a gas tank on that is not vented. It was cap vented. So I bought a brand new cap on it. This was in California, and it would drive just fine, and then it would just start chugging and chugging and chugging, and it would shut off, and I couldn't figure it out, and there was no fuel coming anywhere. And then I took the cap off, and I heard and then it started running fine again. So I put the old busted cap on it, and to this day, that old busted cap's still on that car, because it allows it to vent.
It keeps the fuel in, right?
Yeah, because and I had a motorcycle that did that too. It did the same thing.
Mohawk 62 saying that my dad used three-barrel Hollies on his circle track cars.
Oh, well, that'd be awesome, because you're pretty much either pegging the throttle or kind of feathering it, getting in and out of the corner. So yeah, that would be like ideal. I was actually trying to Google it when you were talking there about Holly 3-barrel. I couldn't get any images to come up. So
Oh,
yeah.
I want to say it's like 1780 or something like that. I don't remember what the.
Yeah.
So Michael Schmidt says the Holly 3-barrel. I've seen a mechanical secondary gear contraption for those, and I have seen a contraption to convert it to a dual squirter. Too many contraptions for me to use. So, yeah, the Holly 3-barrel is a unique unicorn out there. They exist.
Oh yeah, I see it now. Okay, so it's actually a 4604S is what it's saying here. They're like $1,600, man.
Yeah, they're not cheap.
Wow. Well, this one's a vacuum secondary though, so I don't know what people are looking for.
So Schweers and Gears says I'm building a 400 small block Chevy with a 3.5-inch crank.
Oh, we're way past that, dude. That's
Are we?
Oh yeah, we're really that was about my computer just updated also, and that was like 15 minutes behind.
That's only 7 minutes ago.
Really?
Yeah, didn't you read this one?
Maybe it reposted.
I thought I went past the one that you were on.
This one right here?
Yep.
Okay.
Um.
Okay. I'm building a 400 small block with a 3.5 crank with a solid roller lifters. I've found our comp and our, especially for small base circle heads, are Clay Smith with full porting. I'm planning on running Valley vents.
Okay, so if those lifters are for a small base circle cam, there's a difference in the band, where the band is located at. Otherwise, if you put regular lifters in there with a small base circle cam, which is a smaller diameter, the lifter would sit further down in the hole, and you'd either have no oil or just be gushing out the top or the bottom.
Yeah. Damien, this is my thing. Do you ever read my what I put on there? More worthless info about cars and if a YouTube video sucks or not. That's what I put on there. That's our description of what we talk about. Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm gonna see if anyone reads it. So yeah, that's actually it. LC2 kids saying nice explanation. A difference in solid and hydraulic. Yeah, no problem. Like Downs was saying, all a hydraulic is literally all. A hydraulic just instead of setting lash, hydraulically you're setting lash. That's all you're doing, and then you have a check ball on the bottom with a little plate, it's a little metal flat plate. And as oil, you have a low pressure chamber and high pressure chamber. As the oil goes in, it basically takes up the slack, and as it goes through its cycle, it slowly compresses it, and when it gets back on its base circle, it fills back up. It takes the slack up. So that's why it does that. And that's why a lot of the times when you are over RPM a hydraulic, you'll start to hear noise, and what you're hearing is the noise from because it just can't pump back up, and that's the main reason why I tell everyone to take them 20 thousandths from the bottom up, so that way even if it goes away, all the hydraulic lock on it, then it's just a solid at that point.
It's just getting 20 thousandths. That's all it's getting.
It's just getting 20 thousandths.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Moving on, Shane. Didn't implode. Yes, right. Shane, you're lucky it didn't implode the tank. Yes, you're absolutely correct. Luckily, I had almost a full tank of fuel, so I was thinking about that myself because you can't compress, liquid. So if it had nearly an empty tank, yeah, I believe it would have compressed. So, okay, Big Block 402 saying every time I hit second gear at No Name Nationals, it would fall on its nose. It's a lot better now with good pressure. I'll be putting the 5/16 return in this winter. Awesome.
Oh, so yeah, if that guy's building that motor with solid roller lifters that are for a small base circle cam, you have to get a small base circle cam, and you got to know what size.
Yeah, and check it too, because small base circle technically is anything under 1 inch. Most small block Chevrolets are going to be like in the 1.1. Obviously, it comes down to lift, but most of them are going to be in the 1.1 range or there. Some of the small base circle are like 980. You can specify. A lot of them are 950. I've seen them all the way down as small as 850 as far as the base circle. And that's
right.
tiny.
There is a point where they start to flex really bad when you got a lot of spring pressure, that the actual core of the cam will start to flex as the valve is opening, right?
Yeah.
And that is horrifically bad on the camshaft, especially if it's a high RPM piece.
And
It
timing.
won't last long.
On small block Chevrolet, distributors in the back. So your timing starts to go all over the place because it starts going
Twisting the cam.
Yeah, and in fact, I'm worried about that on my small block Mopar. That's why I put a crank trigger on it for when I'm running the juice. So that way I can keep it, timing. So the distributor now is just basically that's it. All it is a distributor. So it's got to be phased. Barrow's Garage is saying hot. Lash is very important with saw lifters. A friend of mine had a 51 Hudson rebuilt, but they set the lash for hydraulics. It would run fine until it warmed up and would die. Absolutely. FEs are famous for this too, believe it or not. If you put hydraulics in that thing, and they're not, I mean, they're. I built this a 390 for this gentleman, and he bought an aftermarket camshaft. And I put it in there, I degreed it in, and he had stock push rods. And I told him, I was like, well, we're probably going to have to change these. He said, nope, these are going to be fine. Fine. Put them in there, and it just wouldn't, it would start, it would run, but it just had no power. And it was the same type of deal. It would just, he had adjusters. Oh, it was just a pain in the butt. FEs are just infamous for that. Okay. Oh, Holly here. Big Block 402s. I remember seeing a Holly 3-barrel on a Super Chevy show years ago. It was neat. Yeah. I was actually looking at a picture of it. I think that looks awesome. Boy, we got a lot of chats going on here. They're coming in quick now.
Yeah.
My phone
Let's
tonight.
see. Well,
here. Michael Schmidt, PRI, any highly anticipated new products that are earth-shattering in the industry you are looking forward to seeing? Well, I am in the industry, and yes, come by the Edelbrock booth, and I'll be able to show it and talk about it then. And then after that, after SEMA, I'll see if they'll allow me to talk about them here. I got some cool stuff, and we actually, as a group, have some really cool stuff coming out. So yes, we got some earth-shattering. Really, obviously, there's only a new way to reinvent the wheel.
Me and Professor P have been kicking around the idea of opening our own little speed shop.
Yes.
And we might have to be introducing new parts at SEMA one year or PRI.
We're not going to compete. I'm not going to compete, but it's
no. This is just side thing that nobody else does, and it fills a void.
Yes, it does, because what am I into? It says Slant Daily Garage. What's Dallas into?
Buick junk.
So, who makes parts for any of that stuff? So, use your imagination. So,
dude, did you see this question here from LC2 Kid? Carbon fiber push rods. Wonder how the long exposure with oil works. Lightweight and strong. It would be strong as steel, that's for sure, and lighter than aluminum.
There was a company that was making carbon fiber rods for a little while, and the problem is the oil just breaks it down. It's just the resin just cannot handle it.
Well, and the resin is epoxy, right? And generally all that stuff is oil soluble.
Yeah, exactly. It just breaks it down. It's great for a little while, but it just wouldn't last. And especially a push rod that has to oil up through the push rod. So now you got oil on both sides of it. So it's just
pressurized hot oil coming from the inside.
Yeah.
The only gain I see from the carbon fiber rod, and I remember seeing them, they looked like
they were trick.
Space age, right?
Yeah,
I mean, the best way I can put it is it looks like a connecting rod that literally like Venom from the Spider-Man Marvel series put together, right?
Right.
And the good thing about those is when you wind them up too high and you go to kick out a rod, it really doesn't kick it out because it just shatter against the side of the block, I'm thinking. I mean, they are stronger than steel, but they're still not steel, right? So I don't think you could kick one out. I think it'd just be a pan full of shattered carbon fiber.
Yeah, right. Oh, you know what? I'll let. Buff Del Campo's asking the Slant parts. Yeah. We're gonna do some cool stuff, man. I've already started doing a couple things. I've got the load spreader. You have one, and then I'm working on taking a Slant to where you can put it to a small block Mopar, so that way you can run, like, say, an overdrive transmission. I just finished building my A500. Actually, TCI just finished building my A500, and so that's going to be my next project, is putting that into the Dart, my Lizard King. And I'm not gonna go so crazy with it. Last time I was trying to hit that 30 miles per gallon, so I put 323 gears in it with a 204R. The problem is that it just didn't run right. I
Well,
don't.
it's geared down too much.
It just.
The 204R has a 0.67 to 1 overdrive, right? Most things run a 0.76. The problem is with you take a Slant 6, see the ideal transmission for the Slant 6 would be, if you had to pick any of the overdrives, would probably be a 204R because it was designed for the Buick 231
Yeah.
and the 307 Oldsmobile.
Yeah.
Low RPM, medium range torque, small V8 or decent V6, right? But they're not power hungry,
No.
but the overdrive is super deep on them.
Yeah. I should have went with a 355 or a 373.
You should have probably been somewhere up. No, I'm thinking you probably should have been like 391, and that probably would have been ideal because it would have been right there at around 2200 RPM.
Well, with a 323 with my tire size and in full lockup, at 70 miles an hour, my car was at 2100 RPM with that
Already?
setup. Yeah, because it's only 26 diameter tire, 26.3. So this next setup that I'm going to do now, an A500 also has a crazy like 0.6 overdrive, 0.69 or 0.68, I think is what it is. But I'm going to go with the 323. I'm sorry, 355 gear in this one. And I was always having problems with, vibration.
Well, that's where you probably learned about your harmonics, right?
Exactly. And so
Critical speed.
The 204R is a very short transmission, where the one I'm putting in there is a very long
compared
one.
to your Chrysler stuff. Yeah, it's the same length as a turbo 350, exact same length.
Yeah, but it's exactly. But this thing's really long, so I'm going to have a much shorter drive shaft. So that way, and now I have an aluminum drive shaft out there. There's a 4-inch, and there's I believe it was Randy's. Randy's makes a 1350 U joint for a 7 1/4 rear end, so I can run 1350 U joints. So that way, I can run a 4-inch aluminum drive shaft with 1350 U joints. And so that way, critical speed will not be a problem in harmonics.
I mean, nothing, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so JB's little shop's here saying, I just say what comes to mind. No one has a comment on a 2.8 other than it's trash. It's not trash. The 60-degree V6 actually has a lot of potential. When they went road racing in those things, they found that they love boost.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the 60-degree V6 things, is that they are happy with boost.
Yeah. I'm going to catch up a little bit here because we're kind of we're starting.
Okay.
Patrick's asked me this question here. Shane, what do you think about cryogenic processing of blocks, cranks, and rods? Now, I don't have any knowledge on the blocks. I can't tell you about that. But as far as cranks and rods, absolutely. When you cryo and then I do the heat, I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago.
Just last week we talked
Was it
about
last
it
week?
because I remember what I was going to say, that I was looking into cryogenic treating.
Oh yeah, well, Cryo Heat in San Diego was the place I used to use all the time, and I did all my gears for my 8 3/4, and then all my I did it back in the '90s when I was racing motorcycles. I did it on the cranks and the rods in my 125, my 250, my 500s. It just lines up. It just relieves all the molecules, gets them all in line, and it just relieves them. It's a really good way to do it, and you're basically cutting the wear really down on them. So. As far as the blocks, though, I've never done this on blocks on a cast iron part, so I couldn't tell you on that one. I don't know anything about that.
I was actually going to do it on a set of cylinder heads. See, the Buick big block heads are prone to cracking, and they crack right into a water jacket in between the two exhaust valve Siamese in the center, and then you end up with generally a valve train full of antifreeze and what's supposed to be oil. Okay, so I thought if I could find a good set of those heads that hadn't been cracked and have them cryogenically treating them, would that fix the problem? Because I'm assuming the crack is actually coming from two things. Mm-hmm. Heat, it's generally heat and expansion, right? And since it's right,
point cracks.
yeah, and it's like right there in the center. I don't know if cryogenically treating would fix that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I really don't. I think running it at a cooler operating temperature might fix that.
So there was a thing here. It says my Slant in a 67 Belvedere really like 60 miles an hour, 21.5 miles per gallon average. Okay, I agree with you. Here's what what I was doing with my whole thing is that in San Diego, I wanted to have a 69 Dart 4-door Slant 6. I went 25 miles to work one way, and I wanted to get 30 miles to the gallon between 70 and 80 miles per hour. Now, I never hit that. The closest I ever got was 27 miles to the gallon with a 204R and a 2-barrel, Holly 2-barrel. But it was kind of anemic, and because an 8 3/4 just saps so much power as far as around town.
That
Best,
200 was probably hogging up some power over the 904 too.
Yes, it was. So the setup that I like the best is my 904 with a lockup so far, and the 600 Edelbrock AVS carburetor on it. I can get about 24 miles to the gallon with that setup, and that's not going slow. That's like 70 to 80 miles an hour. In fact, I drove it from here to Tucson when I relocated to Tennessee. I drove from here to Tucson nonstop. It took me 23 hours, and it got 22 miles of the gallon there. On the way home, I drove mostly during the day through the desert. Then at night, we were kind of going through some of the hills through Texas and whatnot in Arkansas. And I got like 24 miles to the gallon. And I did drag weekend, and I got 24.06 or 24.6 miles to the gallon. And that's including going down the drag strip. So, there's a lot of potential in those things. And, even the wife's new car, we got her a Journey, Dodge Journey. We love it. And it gets about 27 miles to the gallon. So, I'm not doing too bad with the Slant 6,
So Michael Schmidt's saying, vintage manual transmission gears, what process can be done to reduce friction and increase longevity? Is it cost effective? Okay, well, and it depends what you consider cost effective. Generally, when you ask that as a second question, no. For your practical purposes, no, because you're already concerned about cost. So no matter what you throw out there, it's going to be cost and effective for you. But in reality, there is a coating that they call DLC. It's diamond-like coating, right? Yep. And it's, what is it, 10 thousandths deep?
No, it's less than that.
Is it?
Yeah, it's like it's less than a thou. Thick.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's really thin.
Okay, well, either way, it's what they used in. NASCAR is the one that really made this thing kind of famous, right? I'm sure the coating's been around for a while. It was probably applied for like NASA or something like that, But somebody ended up finding out that what it is impregnating metal with raw carbon. Isn't that what it is? I think it's raw carbon. And you take regular metal, you impregnate it with raw carbon. It turns to like this black color. Okay. And in the pores of the metal is like raw carbon. And what happens is when, say, and NASCAR would use them on wrist pins. That was the big place that they'd use them on. Because what happens is once you lose oil for lubrication to that point, it gets to a temperature where that carbon breaks down and it starts to lubricate, just like graphite. And it would definitely do the same thing on the gears that you're looking at. It would increase longevity. Cost effectiveness, I don't know. It's been around for about, maybe 10, 15 years now?
Yeah,
so I imagine that it probably would be very cost effective for what it was 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, it's the thickness on it is 1 to 5 microns. Oh, it's thin.
Okay, I thought it was 10 thousandths.
No,
Parkerization.
No. It's thin, and basically it just fills in the molecule holes. Is really what it's doing.
Oh, I thought it was in the pores. So it's in between the molecules.
Yeah,
and it's carbon.
It's in there.
It's like they call it DLC. It's diamond-like coating.
And it makes
it hard.
Yeah. So he's asking right now, it still has a Holly 1920 1-barrel, 294 rear, I believe. What should be my first step in improving the fuel mileage? Believe it or not, exhaust and get rid of that 1-barrel carburetor. Because the second you make more power and torque, you're going to use less fuel. I thought the 1-barrel was the way to go, and I got to tell you, as soon as I put an exhaust on there, 2.5 inch all the way back, get a muffler you can see through. And then put a 2-barrel on it, even like, say, one of the Super 6 style, and it will definitely get better mileage, get better power, and you won't be all over it. My wife has got a Valiant with a 1-barrel on it, completely stock, and if you're not going over, say, 60 miles an hour on it, gets great mileage. The second you start putting really the beans to it and you're trying to get on the freeway, the mileage goes way down, because it just can't get all that exhaust out. It bottles up in there. So you're actually using some of the power to push out that exhaust.
We were just talking about this the other day. It's a 1
Yeah.
7/8 inch exhaust, isn't that right?
It's tiny.
1
yeah.
3/4 something.
Yeah, it's I think it's 1 3/4. It's tiny, man. It's absolutely ridiculous, especially on that car. It's really tiny. Yeah. Let's see, where else are we going? Oh, speaking of which, I just dropped a video. I'm going to throw this out to all the people out here. So, I haven't made a video in a while. I was, No Name Nationals coming up. No one's really interested in my Cookie Monster as far as videos go, so I didn't really make any. Plus, I was trying to slam on it to get it out. But I started working on Gilbert's Slanted Sled. So I talked to Dallas about this, but I'm going to pose this out to you guys. And you guys can comment in the chats. You can tell me slantdailygarage@yahoo.com. He really wants me to take this thing apart. But I ran a compression test on this thing, and this thing's literally 165 across the board. I think I had two of them that were 170. I think two of them were 160, but the other two I think were 165. So it averaged out to 165. Looking underneath it, it looks good. The valves look good. The adjustment was good. The timing was way out. It was like 18 degrees of initial. I think like 41 degrees total timing. Carburation, and it had a 1-barrel carb on it, and the exhaust is the factory exhaust, and the thing just has no power. So he wants me to do a complete rebuild on the car, on the engine. Now I've got an extra block, and this thing was rebuilt in 1987. I forget the exact month. It's 60 over 1010 on the crank. I think I'm with you on this one, Dallas. I think I'm going to pull it out. I'm going to pop the head off, and I'm just going to see what it has to show. Obviously it doesn't have the shim gasket on. It's probably got a Fel-Pro on it. And then I might just take a look at it and just see what it is. Just instead of just taking it apart just to rebuild it to do.
Right. Is it got good oil pressure? Because it already has good compression. So if it has good oil pressure and good compression,
I have not put anything on the oil pump yet to actually check it, but all it has is an idiot light on those cars. So you take out there's a little valve in the side, and you can put a thing in it and run it. But right now I kind of have everything apart in anticipation of pulling it out or doing something with it. But if I pull it out, I'll take the oil pump off and I'll blueprint the oil pump. But I'll know right off the bat if it's got crappy oil pressure or not. But when I started up,
check it before you take it out, because that way if it's going to need bearings or not. If it's been overheated, generally they
cook.
Usually end up scoring the bearings pretty good.
Well, I can turn it over and with the plugs out and everything. I mean, I could put the plugs back in really simply and start the damn thing back up. And then that way too, I can put the valve cover on it. Yeah, that's a good video. I'll do that. I have a valve cover that I have the top cut off, so I can look at the valves while it's running and see oil pressure, how much oil is going across it, and I'll put a gauge on that oil pump and see what kind of oil pressure it's got.
Yeah, because that'd give you a good idea of where that thing needs to be to begin with. Because this guy wants a rebuild so bad.
Yeah.
But isn't that the stock motor to the car?
I don't know.
If it's not, then it's no big deal. It's a wash, right? Yeah. You could just trade them 1 for 1 and then stick that short block in Plan Z, and who cares?
Yeah, it's a 3-freeze plug on it, so it's an early block, so that means it's either 67 or something. So I'm going to assume that it's probably a 66 and older block, because 67s are kind of their own little animal. And it's definitely an older converter because it's still a push button, so it's got to have the crankshaft. So my guess is that it's the original block that they just rebuilt. That was back when you handed someone an engine, they rebuilt it and they handed it back. So
yeah, and then and Michael Schmidt's saying it all down here, right here. The last comment, right
here.
Shane, I find that a lot of these guys that have classic cars can benefit by having a knowledgeable person tuning their car and making speed part recommendations to improve drivability versus full rebuild. Yep. What we're looking at here is we're actually the community with all the knowledge, and you're looking at guys that have never ever seen a carburetor. They've never seen one on a car, right? And they have no idea. There was a post today on the Buick, one of the Buick Facebook pages I'm on. There was a guy, he had pulling this 225 V6 Buick apart, right? And he just put new gaskets in it, and it wouldn't run. and he was like, I don't know why it won't run. Like it's got fuel, it's got spark. I can't figure out why it won't run. And I'm thinking to myself, this guy just replaced the gaskets in the intake manifold, cylinder heads. I wonder if this thing has a major vacuum leak and he has no understanding of what that is.
I
Right?
checked for a vacuum leak. I did
Oh no,
the.
I'm not talking about your buddy. I'm just talking
Oh,
about this thing
okay.
on YouTube, because this guy was befuddled. He couldn't figure out why it ran before, and all I did was replace gaskets, and now it
Oh,
won't run at all. And it's
gotcha.
like it's something that you did, dude.
Hmm.
It's that simple. It's probably a vacuum line you got off, or you got going to the wrong place, or because um, Buicks generally have a big port on the back of the intake manifold that runs the brakes,
Hmm.
right? I've seen guys run that thing to like the transmission, you know,
Yeah, right.
25 pieces of hose clamped together, go
Yep.
down to the transmission to run the modulator. But then what they do is they take the power brakes and they run into the vacuum line on the carburetor port,
Hmm.
right? And you got all this stuff in the wrong place, and it's just enough vacuum imbalance that you can't, it has no vacuum underneath the carburetor.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and I did the whole thing of spraying. That's the stuff I did off camera. But there was one thing though that it did have lack of power, and I did drive it around the block first. Just to, I checked for full throttle. I mean, I did all that stuff. But there was one thing too that kind of caught my eyes too, is that when I was taking the plugs out, the plugs were literally in there by hand. Now they did have the washers on them, and they did have what they called the drool tube on them. So that's not his fault, because that will happen, and when you put that on there, it might push that away and then get loose and then come out. But they were in there by hand, and I think it really needs, if anything, when I called them up and talked to him about it, because I still haven't called him back actually, and asked and really got what he wanted. But when I talked to him that day, I wanted him to sit and think about it and then call me when he has a real answer. He wants more torque, and I said torque is definitely what you need with this thing. And I told him, first thing, obviously we're going to change the intake, and I've got a 2-barrel intake here. I might just plop on there for him, and then I would put either the dual Dolce duals, or just even I have that single that's been ported out. I ported the crap out of the thing, and it runs awesome. And that's a setup, so I could just basically put that on his car, and that thing runs really good. I'm not really sure if I'm going to do that or one, but I definitely am going to put a camshaft in it, and of some sort, but something that's really nice. And I definitely want to do some of the oiling mods. And to do the oiling mods, I can do it with it. I mean, I would have to take the engine apart, but I could just basically put it back together. So I don't know. I don't know what I want to do.
I don't know what it seems like. If it's got good compression,
Leave it alone.
you know what? If it's got hot, here's what I do. If you're going to take it down to a bare block anyway, just order rings and bearings for it, hone that sucker, put it back together, check everything out, and say it's not the bottom end,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
not. It didn't need anything. I honed it, put new rings in it, put new bearings in it because I was concerned that it got hot and the bearings lost their crush. And because that's normally what happens is when a bearing gets
Hmm.
hot, it'll lose its crush first.
Yeah, that's right.
And
It falls
then,
right out. Yeah.
yeah, shortly after that, they spin.
Yeah,
So,
everybody's kind of saying the same thing here, is that they say just kind of leave it alone. Don't do this, don't do that. Um, Michael Schmidt's saying, it's funny. He says this right here, because this is exactly what I suggested to him. Uh, I used to use Weber Progressives on Volkswagens all the time, and a Weber Progressive on one of these would actually kind of might be ideal, because it's a 1-barrel. It's a 2-barrel carburetor, but it's a 1-barrel and then a 2-barrel when you floor it.
but it
So
doesn't have a big second barrel. It's the same size as the first one, right?
yes, yes.
I bet you that's what the problem is. Okay, so the GM, if you had a 2-barrel Buick 350,
Hmm.
it would run around getting 15, 16 miles a gallon. But if you had a 4-barrel Buick 350 and you were easy on it, just drive around like you would a 2-barrel, it would get 18 miles a gallon. And it was
Yeah.
because the primaries were so much smaller on that quadrojet than they're only 250 CFM. And if the GM 2-barrel was 500, right? So I think it has something to do with that. Is the primary on the Weber smaller than the factory 1-barrel carb on that
I
thing?
think you can buy them in 36, 38. So it goes by millimeters. So I think it's 36 millimeter and 38, or I think they make them in different variations. So um, I don't, we're getting into the 1990s in my part of the brain, and I've killed those brain cells 10 times over.
Yeah, there's a
But
lot of beers and joints in between there.
a lot, right? So I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was 36-38 if I remember correctly. But that's funny you say that, because that's exactly what I was talking to you about the other day. Is that's why I think that my Holley 2-barrel 350 runs so poorly compared to, I shouldn't use the word poorly, it just runs less good as my Edelbrock 600, because the Edelbrock 600 is like 250 on the primary CFM and then 400 on the back two, where the 2-barrel is 350 all the way around. So my Edelbrock just runs so great on that Slant 6, and even when you floor it, it comes in hard, and it runs really good. So maybe it just tuned well. I don't know. It's like the magic carb. You always have a magic carb.
Well, and what it is you're just looking for the smaller primary, so that the port velocity is higher.
High, yes, yeah. Especially at low RPM. That's the thing, and that's where I noticed too and that's why I raised my shift points to begin with on the Hollies, because I had to RPM it so that way when it shifted, it wasn't like at a 1500 RPM where it would just stall the air.
Yeah.
And then when I put the Edelbrock on it, it was actually a little too high, but I was like, wow, this is.
Well, if you've ever noticed this, like people come on here for carburetor recommendations, and I ask them, are you going to drive it on the street? Yeah, Quadrajet. Right, and that's because, dude, that is a great street carburetor because of those small primaries.
Yeah,
and it really helps with the velocity going through there, which helps with your signal to the carburetor.
Dizzy is saying, I've seen a Slant with 6 Mikuni carbs, the other with 3 Webers feeding 2 cylinders. Yeah, in fact, there's I forget the guy's name, but he's on YouTube. It's an Australian guy. He made one for like a road racing person. And it had 3 Webers on it, and that thing made like 220 horse, 230 horse. It was actually pretty good. It ran really well, but I don't know, man. We'll see what this guy. Oh, John Wilburn saying this is good. Like the guy who fixed a vacuum leak by running a short hose from a port below the throttle blades to the port above them.
Perfect. Fixed.
So, yeah, right. He just created a different vacuum leak from a different port. Sure.
And now it looks like it's plugged, so it'd just be kind of like, oh man, what's going on here?
But the thing is that's what John's saying right there is the exact unknowledge that people have with carburetors. They don't understand that. They just think as a port. They don't know that there's an above blade and a below blade. Okay, yeah. So here it is. Rick Salmon is saying that the popular Weber Progressive on VWs is 3236. So, okay, that he is correct on that. That sounds familiar. But they make a 3838.
Yeah, you wouldn't want that. You would want that 3236 if you're going to drive it on the street, which you're doing with a Slant, right?
Yeah, and the 3236 was good for like 1641s with like say 041 heads, 1776s. 1835s, but then once you got to like the 1914 with like when you had a 94 millimeter piston, 69 crank on that, it just wasn't all that great. It was too much engine at that point. So that's the only thing that scares me about putting them on. I say scares me, but worries me is that I knew that on like say a 1.9 Volkswagen, but you RPM a Volkswagen comparatively to a Slant 6, and it just didn't have.
Lout Burns is saying that on the 258 AMC 6, we usually milled the head 40 thousandths just to account for the gasket, and they always ran better.
Oh yeah, as soon as I take apart a Slant 6, the first thing I do is I deck that head 100 thousandths and I deck the block 100 thousandths right off the bat, because they're spec'd for 8-to-1 compression. I have rarely the worst one I've ever seen with the shim gasket on it. When you did the math on it, was like 6.9-to-1 compression on a Slant 6.
Yeah. God, what an anemic turd that thing would be.
And the piston was 187 thousandths into the hole, and the chamber had 100 thousandths of sleeve before the valve chamber even started. So you do the math on that, but it did have a 20,000 shim head gasket.
Oh wow!
Yeah, but
I can only see what was happening. This was Friday, and the worker would come up to the boss. Hey, boss, we got all this extra cast iron. What would you like to do with it? Well, just pour it into the Slant 6 blocks. I mean, they run no matter what.
Right. Yeah. This I read this one for me. I try to read it.
Okay,
Awkward tech.
one Neo Ian.
Yeah.
Awkward tech. Are there two carbs that we can put on a spread bore intake instead of a spread bore 4-barrel carb? Okay. No, I don't think you can. The spread bore itself is there's only two carburetors that really are like that, and it's the Quadrajet and the Thermoquad.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Thermoquad was made to replace the Quadrajet because of its insufficiency with fuel. It only has a really small bowl.
Yeah, that was
And
it. Boils out.
Right. And then, so what they did is they took the Carter AVS or AFB and amalgamated it with the Quadrajet, and you got this weird offspring child with a plastic, phenolic main body. So,
Yeah.
but
Michael Schmidt.
yeah, I don't think there is that two that you could put side by side and have a progressive setup. They're probably not spaced correctly.
Yeah. Michael Schmidt, shave the head if the head is off no matter what. 100%. Always. Because remember, these things came with 20,000 shims on them, and you're going to put a 39,000 gasket on it. So even if you just take the head off and put it back on, you're going to go down in compression, which is down in power. So I always shave it no matter what, every single time on a new engine.
Buff, you're right. Holly spreadboard. They did make a Holly spreadboard that was a replacement for the Quadrajet, but I don't think they even make them anymore. That's right. But they don't make a Thermoquad or a Quadrajet either. So you're right. They did make a Holly spreadboard.
These are people talking between them. Yeah. So that's. So I think I'm going to give him I'm going to text him right now. See what he says. I'm just going to tell him I'm just going to pull it out. I'm just going to inspect. I'll pop the head off. If anything, if I do any machining to it,
I'm telling you, ring gasket, rebearing.
I wouldn't even re-ring it. If I can put my finger in there and I can still see crosshatch, even at the bottom of the bore, and there's no ring on it, I don't even think I'll re-ring it. I would just basically have hardened seats if it doesn't have hardened seats in it. I will just check to see how the valve job is. And if it's got hardened seats in it, I'll just do a lap job on it. I'll back cut the valves. I'll just clean up the bowl slightly, and away she goes. And change the camshaft, and that will definitely help out quite a bit. Yeah. Oh. Speaking of which, I was just checking a YouTube here, and guess who else has started doing their Tech Talk on Wednesdays again?
Oh, who's that?
Oh.
Great.
Right? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. Okay, getting ready for MEPS in the morning.
Oh, Silver Kilgore must be joining the army.
Oh, yeah. Here, saying there was a 2-barrel that bolted onto a spreadboard intake, looked like a Q-jet.
Oh, that's a GM 2-barrel though. We used to call them the Makra jet, but it was I can't remember what it was called. I think a dual jet. I think it's dual jet, and it literally looked like an entire Quadrajet, but it just had the front 2 barrels. That was it.
Yeah. Yeah. We still get that. I go back and do returns all the time. They throw a lot of stuff away, so there's little things. If it's in the trash can, I can use it. I'm picking it up. But there's people who spray paint carburetors like literally from the wrecking yard with rattle can chrome, and they'll take Edelbrock stickers and they'll put an Edelbrock sticker on it, put it in the box, and return it and say it's our carburetor.
Yeah.
Let's see, we're here. What's he saying here? I know who, Shane. I'll keep more secrets for you, bud. LUL. I know you have at your house. I know what you have at your house.
I was probably talking about Plan Z.
Oh, probably.
Yeah, that's not a secret.
Oh, yeah. So it's not a secret. Not at Here we go. Shane, does Slant benefit from timing advance, the faster mechanical advance than quick, easy, and Dallas cheap? Here's the thing about the Slant 6.
That's a whole new level now. Dallas cheap.
The problem with the Slant 6 stock distributor is how much advance it has built into it as far as mechanical. They have a little stop on them. They have a big long plate, and on that plate it'll tell you how much it is, but it'll be like, say, 15, but 15 times 2, obviously, that's 30. So if you only want 30 degrees of total timing in these 28 to 30, that means you're starting at 0. So what I typically do is I'll weld them up, the plate, and re-drill it, or actually re-slot it, so that way I can only get, like, say, 15 to about 15 degrees on these things. So I can run these things at about, say, 11 when I'm running 87. I can put up 15 as far as idle, and then I'm running only about 28 to 30 degrees total timing on it. But as far as the timing advance on a Slant 6 is that you really want the timing to be higher than factory right off the bat. But if you're going to start it at 0 or even 2 degrees after, where some of these are at, you really want it to kind of come on quick, then hover there for a while, and then slowly roll in. But if you can get rid of that coming in quick deal and then just kind of leave it at the 10, 11, and then slowly roll it in, like, say, after, like, say, 2400, but you don't want it all in by 2400. You want to slowly roll in if you have heavy gears. I shouldn't say heavy gears, like 276 gears. But yeah, they can definitely benefit from them. And then as far as the vacuum advance, I've played with that thing all over the place, and I noticed that the longer it takes to come in, the better. So that way you're not going to get in some situation. Because remember, this thing's got a 225's got a 120 something stroke with a 7-inch rod, so it loves to detonate. It just loves it.
Well, yeah. So I saw this awesome comment here by Boring Builds at 819.
All right, here,
right?
Got it.
Hey, gentlemen, seeing y'all made my Wednesday night. I'm working night shift making hydraulic hoses for my backhoe on the company press. Hashtag F 'em. So, yeah, well, I'm glad you had an opportunity to check us out while you're at work using their equipment on your stuff.
Yeah.
So that used to be the benefit of working there, right? I mean, you just make something on their stuff. That used to be a big selling point. I went and applied for a job just the other day, and it was working at this small microbrewery, and I get free beer in concerts because they have a concert venue there. Free beer in concerts if I work there. And I'm like, man, that's pretty cool. And tonight I should have went out there tonight. They're having Static X and Seven Dust, right? Wouldn't that be awesome? Yeah. Wouldn't that be awesome? I thought Static X was gone because the lead singer died like in 2006 or 7.
Dude, they're having, like, literally Static X play there?
Yeah. Static X and Seven Dust.
That is, like, awesome.
I know, and I didn't know about it till today, or I probably would have told you.
Yeah, wow. We would have just done the live from there.
There would have been no tech talking. Can you hear me?
Big Block 402 saying I'm putting an electronic distributor on my 383. Is there a conversion that I need to stay away from, and one that is recommended? I know quality is what it used to be. What exactly are you trying to get out of this? Is because you could get a Pertronics and put it into a points distributor, and it will be just fine. In that way, you can get rid of the ballast resistor, or you can do an HEI module and hide everything and run a Ford coil. It runs another 12.
Man, that's the one I would do right there.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it works beautiful, and
there's a
cheap.
million of them Ford coils in the junkyard, and there's a million HEI modules in the junkyard. Well, I don't know about now, but you can easily get them at any part store.
Yeah, actually, what I do is I have a whole thing just full of them out here. A 1996 Chevy Blazer. Go get the Ford the module that's on the top of the engine. It's got a little aluminum
the heat sink. Yeah.
Now the holes don't line up perfectly, and you have to do a little modification to it, but they're everywhere. And you can get them for, a pocket, or you can, even if you really want to pay for it, they're like $1. And then the bracket you can get like off of a 94 or 96 Ford, any truck. and then they bolt standing straight up, and they got 2 bolts, so it's like the perfect setup. And then you can just get any coil, any Ford coil, or any 4-pin module, and they just work awesome. That's the way I would go. I've been doing that since the 1990s because I've said this 1,000 times. I could never afford an MSD box, so that's what I had to do.
I just ran HEI distributors because luckily my manufacturer made them. But Boring Builds is saying, not trying to open up an old wound, but UTG should have done Wednesday night. No, it seems personal. I would agree with that. I'm kind of surprised, actually, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, that was the first for me. In fact, I was just talking to him yesterday, so weird.
Love y'all both, but my loyalty resides with the Professor and the Godfather, Dallas. So thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm not the Godfather. I'm far from it. Right?
Yeah. I'm not bitter about it. He has his place. I have my place. So
well, I'm not bitter either. I really there was really nothing between us. It was all, he got upset and he threw everyone to the curb. Me, I just was like, yeah, okay, and just packed up my stuff and left. Yeah. But then when I started doing it on Wednesday night, I'm like, well, because I told him. Shane and I did the last tech talk with that guy.
That was on a Saturday.
It was a Saturday. He called me on Saturday, and we're doing our last tech talk ever on Saturday. I said, what? Why? What's going on?
I found out about it that night.
That was when we were in there, when he told us, right? And I'm like, oh, my God, what the heck? So then you and I remember explicitly telling the guy, hey, we're going to take tech talk and just keep doing it on Wednesdays then. And he was like, yeah, fine. I'm like, okay, cool. And I mean, it was... me and Tony did it anyway.
So I appreciate that, but thank you. Like I said, I'm not doing this to be like famous. This is not my career by any point or any chance. I just do this for the community, just for knowledge. As someone who's in the industry and just knows a stupid amount about cars. And same with Dallas. I mean, Dallas is not looking to get rich on this. He's just doing this because this is what we do.
I'll tell you, the entire time I did it with Tony, I didn't get $1. It didn't buy me lunch.
I haven't seen one, even though I had all those super chats come through, I still haven't seen $1.
You get paid at the end of the month. But here's the sad part. But I know you'll get paid at the end of the month. You might not have reached your $100 yet.
Oh.
But here's the really, really sad part is that YouTube takes like some ungodly amount of that, like say 30%. So if somebody sends you a $10 super chat, hey, great, $3 went to Google just for existing.
Wow. Well, anyways, like I said, I'm not doing this as my career. Other people are doing this is because this is their how they're feeding their family or paying their bills, whatever. Hey, more power to you. For me, this is just a community thing, and to help you guys with 2 people that happen to know a lot about stupid information about cars to help you guys out. And we don't know everything. I'll
be the first to tell you I don't know everything, but I'll tell you what I used to do as a kid, all right? Ever since I was 15 years old, probably. See, originally I got on my 13th birthday, my dad got me a subscription to Hot Rod Magazine and cartoons. You remember cartoons?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Okay. I used to wait by the mailbox for them suckers to come out on like the first week of the month, right? Couldn't wait for them. Well, when I got to be like 15, those 2 magazines, they weren't cutting it. I had like a major addiction problem to them. So I would go wait by the newsstand at the local IGA grocery store. And when they'd stock the new mags, at the beginning of the month, I would grab myself a CarCraft. I would grab, actually, I had a lot of them at one point. I was doing like Muscle Car Review was a good one. Mopar Action was a cool one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that even exists anymore, does it?
I don't know.
CarCraft, but there used to be.
Mopar Muscle was the one I used to get a lot of.
I think I probably had Mopar Muscle as well. I don't even remember. I was into all of them at that time, and whatever I could get was what I would grab, and that's generally what I could afford. But every month from when I was like 15 on, when I had a newspaper route, right? And when I was like 15 on, I would blow all my newspaper money on magazines every month, just like clockwork. and I'd come home with like big pile of magazines, and all I do is read them. And where I got a lot of this useless information from was reading those magazines.
Over and over and
Yes.
over again, because that's all we had, was
Yeah.
to learn it. There was not like always a computer to always reference. You had to remember that stuff. So like when I saw really good information, I was like, I need to remember this.
Well, and I was on a ship, and for like my
Yeah,
whole
right.
life, so we would get like one. I would get one magazine in the mail, or sometimes we would pull in and I'd buy one at the NEX, and we might not pull in again for another 3 months. So I'd read that same magazine over and over and over until it'd have greasy thumbprints on it. You'd touched it so many times in the same
Yeah,
spot, right?
yeah,
And I must have read some of them. I bet at least 30 times.
yeah. Hey, before I get, let me do
Oh, we
Michael
gotta.
Schmidt here, and we got a
Oh,
super chat. So we're
yeah.
gonna. So thank you, Michael Schmidt. I appreciate it, and my 7% and get a lunch. So yes, thank you. When I get my first check, I'll let you guys all know. He's asking me, has anyone played with the progressive Bluetooth programmable distributors? Yes, I have. How do you like them? I love them because you don't have to go in and change weights, retime it, redo anything. Literally, it is just set it and forget it. If you remember that reference. Remember the old set it and forget it? Do you guys
Yeah.
remember that? Yeah.
That was a Timex reference, wasn't it?
No, 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 no. Set it and forget it. That was the that toaster oven thing. Remember, it was the rotisserie. You set it and forget it. Yeah.
No.
Anyways, it's late night stupid stuff. But then we got another one here. Lori, actually, I used 1,000 CFM thermal quad on my 425 Buick in a 65 Skylark with the 2-speed super turbine 300 headers and 410 gears. It went 1284 at 103. That's awesome.
That's actually a pretty healthy combination because
Yeah.
that 425 would make you'd have to get like a freight train to bring in how much torque that thing's making, right? And it's not even counting the train; it's just whatever's on the cars.
And with that
And
2-speed, you could use it.
you could well,
Yeah.
and it's a 2-speed switch pitch. It's a Super Turbine 300 switch pitch, so it's
Uh-huh.
got the high stall and low stall torque converter. So and 410 gears, so it probably could use all of it and then not even spin the tires.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
And Jay Malone is saying Petronas 1 replaces points so you can use the ballast resistor and old coil. Yes, you can, but they also sell coils to where you can replace that. So that way you don't have to use the old ballast resistor. They sell a 12-volt coil, and I always recommend that to people because especially on a Mopar, the longer you drive it, the less spark you're going to get because they get hotter, create more resistance, less power to the coil, and it's just a progressive system. Now,
Well, here's what I found: like a ballast resistor was only used on Chryslers, right? GM and Ford had a resistor wire,
mm-hmm.
right? And that resistor wire, it pretty much lasted the life of the car.
Yeah,
When I went to my super stock Buick, I went right to it because I took all the wiring out of it. When I put the super stock setup on the start stand, I just put a ballast resistor on it because it was so easy. But I went through 5 ballast resistors until I got one good one
yeah,
from the parts store. So it took me a while just to find one that would work. And then you don't buy the bottom of the rung; they're junk. They're Chinesium. And so get yourself a good ballast resistor. I ended up ordering one from Summit Racing, I think, and it was for maybe Mallory or I don't even know. Mallory's not around anymore. Who was it? It was MSD. That's what it was.
yeah.
It was MSD ballast resistor. But
And John Wilburn, actually, yeah, we're a little behind, but John Wilburn did say something here. I was lobbying for Shane's 500 subs in that live for the event that can't be mentioned. But yeah, so that was when we were trying to get me to 500 subs. That was that night that I was on the last Tony's. So yeah, that was I have a dual. Oh yes, I have a Mopar dual ballast resistor in the flamethrower box. I've often mentioned this is that the guy down the street when I was a kid, he was a big Land Speed Record guy, and he actually told me that the hot ticket was the Mopar Gold Box, and he used to run the Mopar Gold Box at full 12 volts, and he says it would cook them, but he says at the time, this is probably mid 80s, that was like the best thing around to run was one of those gold boxes. Now I didn't know, I was a kid. I didn't know anything back then, but I would like to open up a gold. I was told that the gold box was the racing one. The chrome one was kind of like the high performance or whatever, the race one, and then the orange one was a high performance one or something like that, and then the factory one was just a stock one. But yeah, that gold one I was told was like the best thing out there, and I ran one for a while, but I'm telling you, the HI and the coil is just always the best. Yeah. Do we got anything else? Oh, yeah, here. Go, Lori. What was the miles per gallon on that Buick 425? I would say gallons per mile. No, I would say it's probably not that bad because with the switch pitch, Dallas, you're doing pretty good in yours, right?
Well, my Suburban does good, but it's a big block Buick that's not the nailhead. I don't know what a nailhead gets in regards to mileage. If it's anything like any of the other Buicks, my Suburban gets 15 with the 400 in it. It got 15 with a 455 in it. Imagine if I put a 350 in there, it'd probably get 8 because it'd just be too much weight trying to move it around. But I'm assuming with a 425 nailhead, it probably was somewhere around 15.
Yeah. As you were talking there, I was kind of rolling through, and I just want to say thanks, guys, for everything. There's a lot of people in here saying that they watch our show and that this is the only tech talk that they like. So thank you. Michael Schmidt was saying that we should advertise as tech show guys, drop some social media, and build the crowd. It will be fun. I'm not really into that. If you guys want to do some advertising, awesome. For me, I really don't have time for that stuff.
We weren't in this for the glory. We weren't in it for the money. We were in it to try to help the community out, to build something that we know what it's like to get stuck on something. And that's like, I'll tell you what, like I kind of expected a lot more questions about like, hey man, I'm using stainless steel braided line. How come I can't get it to, not unravel when I cut it? And Shane and I both have completely different methods on how we do it. And Shane has a nice tool that cuts it off, and I have a Dremel. That's what I use.
Yeah.
So,
that's funny because that's exactly what I use. I have wire cutters. I went to Home Depot and got some wire cutters for like electrical wire, and it lops it right off. And
I thought you said you got cool tools or something.
Well, no, that's how I put them together.
Oh.
So I cut them with the loppers, and it cuts it so cleanly and so evenly that there is literally no frays on it. And then I have the cool tool, which then I can just shove that thing right in there, and I can make a hose in literally a minute. It's really nothing at all.
Yeah. I on the other hand, it takes me a while, and I usually got to fight them. But I'm also the same tool bag that will literally cut off just the end, so 1 inch, and I'll reuse the hose. And I do that over and over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Because that hose is freaking pricey, dude. I can't afford to throw it away.
Yeah. I just happen to work for a company that has, I can get plenty of that stuff, so I'm good. Yeah.
Well, so Boring Build says, thanks for the advice on the 69 Z28 the other day. A guy was very happy with your observations. Cool.
Beautiful. Well, that's what we're here for. Perfect. Lori was saying that she has about 13 miles a gallon with no vacuum advance. Oh, yeah, that would help if you had one of those if you're trying to.
Yeah, you'd probably get 2 to 3, maybe 4 miles a gallon better out of that.
Yeah. 228, 228, and 110. Yeah, perfect. And I like how she put that because I don't care about lift because you can only lift it so much anyways. But yeah, those are good numbers. Yeah, that's good because I believe the nailhead flow pretty good on the exhaust, didn't they?
I don't know.
I don't know. I used to have a little sheet that had all the numbers.
Like the nailhead was absolutely atrocious on flow, period. I want to say the exhaust flowed better than the intake. That's why guys tried superchargers through the exhaust ports. And but I do believe that I don't think they flowed all that well to begin with. That's why they made so much torque. And that's where I believe the Buick engineers figured out that velocity is what creates that torque. Yeah,
because I remember that for the while. Now, I've rebuilt a few Buicks, but they were just nailheads, but they were just factory rebuilds. They were just like a nostalgia guy, camshaft. But I never really got into the numbers of them. But I knew a lot of people ran those for for a lot of years. That was like the race engine for a while.
Well, that was all that Buick had and offered, right? And then when you went to the dealership, see, Buick, that's why Buick was never really in the horsepower game, the muscle car wars. Nobody really understood it. Buick rated all their engines on torque. So when you'd open up the hood and you see 465, guys will be like, oh man, 465 horse. And then you drive it around. It's like, what a turd. This thing does not run like that. What a piece of junk. Well, no, it's rated at 465 foot-pounds of torque at like 2,800 RPM, right?
Yeah.
That was the number. And so people didn't understand it, or they would correlate it to cubic inch. 465? I've never heard of such an engine. Buick doesn't make a 465. I've never seen one of those. Or then you had something even worse. It'd be like your 355. 355? Man, that's a big cubic inch engine. It's got to get bad gas mileage. Well, no, it's rated on torque. It's only 300 cubes. And you try to explain it to the layman and see every other car was rated on horsepower or the cubic inch number.
Mm-hmm.
And Buick had all wrong, right? They were rating them on torque and they were slamming that on the air cleaner. Wow. And then you go drive it and it's unimpressive to that guy.
But it's
right?
seat of the pants. So it's unimpressive because they were trying to RPM them back. But as far as off the line, that Buick would always get people.
Well, that's where the switch pitch came from. Buick had the switch pitch in the Dynaflow. And that's where that was the thing. You could nail them off the line because everybody else, think about it. Everybody else, if you were running a switch pitch Buick, let's say you had a 2-speed, a Dynaflow 2-speed with a 2-speed torque converter. You technically had a 4-speed transmission, okay? Everybody else was running a Power Glide, right? Or a Ford Cruise-O-Matic. They were all 2-speed slip and slide, wet noodle pieces of junk, So the Buick always did feel pretty good off the line, I'm sure, because it had the torque converter advantage, because they're the ones that figured out the torque converter with the switch pitch. Right. If you look at all the other engines right around that same time, the transmissions that they had, like say Oldsmobile, they had their own transmission. It was called a Slim Jim, right? I can't remember what its actual name was, but some of them actually had no torque converter. It had some kind of weird looking coupling device, that was not a clutch. So,
hey, John Wilburn saved me here. It was Ron Popeils. Showtime Rotisserie. Set it and forget it. That's exactly what it was. He was the same guy that did the. Remember, you had the spot on your head, and you would take the spray.
The spray can.
Make spray hair. Yeah, he goes, "Hey, I got a spot on my head. Let's do this quick." And then he would go and do his Showtime Rotisserie. It was one of those like late night things.
Oh, there you go, Danny Boyd, the Rotomatic.
Andy's saying that yes, 1350 U joints are the way to go. Absolutely, don't even start without them. Need a dual pattern for sure. Nothing available during COVID. My new engine will have a Crowder solid roller, 244, 255 on a 107. Just got it. Yay. Awesome.
Yeah. Well, matter of fact, when I was building engines during COVID lockdown, Mr. Polito was providing me with camshafts right from that company. Well, I was paying for them, of course, but I would just make a backdoor phone call deal. Matter of fact, the first 2 years I did the AHRA, Crowder sponsored the. Yeah.
You should pull that up one time because we were right in the middle. There was a thing that if you won or he gave us, there was a discount if you gave him your number.
Yeah, your membership number.
Yeah, you got a discount on it. So yeah, that was I had to. Yep, I remember that. But those are good numbers. 244, 255 on a 107. Oh yeah, that thing's gonna thump.
Yeah, well, they were already thumpy anyway.
Yeah,
the nailheads all had pretty good camshafts in them.
And I like the fact that it's got this 11-degree split with a 107, so it's going to scavenge exhaust. Really good. Yeah, and also too, it's going to scavenge really good. So if it's got crappy flow on the intake, you scavenge on the exhaust.
Yeah, that's exactly why it's got that overlap like that.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm doing on Slant 6 on my for Plan Z. It's going to be like in the 240, 250 on a 106 for the Slant 6. For that exact reason, because it only flows like 150, 160 something.
I've been jonesing to go get this nailhead part up in like Kentucky. It's a crankshaft for a 401. It's a 66 401. So the 66 is an odd duck because it was the only year it had a flange for a turbo 400 transmission. I think that's right. No, maybe not. Maybe 64, 64, 5, and 6. But either way, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
It would have the flange for a Turbo 400, but yet be the small journal nailhead 401 crankshaft, and it's all steel. And that's where I was telling you, hey, you were saying get crankshaft spacers, right? Get
Mm-hmm.
main bearing spacers made, custom main bearing spacers.
Yeah.
And that's probably what I'll end up doing. But I'm just going to do
Yeah.
them on the top. And then on the bottom, I'll just have billet caps made.
Dear. John Wilburn saying, in addition to a spray on hair, Rumpo, I'm just going to call him Ron P. Popeil also invented the pocket fisherman fold-up fishing rod. The name didn't age well. Dude, you know what? My father-in-law had one of those pocket fishermen. It was literally, it extended out and you... That was awesome. My uncle had a 55 454 blown gasker he ran in Tennessee, and a brother-in-law raced. What the hell? His best was a 68 SS with a 409. Oh, he meant
with his best was a 68 SS with 409.
Yeah, those abbreviations always kill me, man. WTH. I thought that was like, what the hell? I don't know. I'm not good with acronyms.
Michael Schmidt saying Buick nailhead, did they suffer from oil problems like the later 455s? I always ran the nailhead, or I always liked the nailhead, but no experience with them. I'm the same way, Michael Schmidt. I've never owned a nailhead.
I built one, but I don't remember the oiling system. It was just stock. It was a stock.
The oiling system on them, the rule of thumb used to be that Buicks always had oiling problems. But when I look back on those nailheads, I don't think suffered from a lot of oiling problems because they were in a lot of race cars. But I know that the later stuff only suffers from it because on the small block, there is 90 degrees or greater turns as it picks up the oil from the sump until it feeds the number one cam bearing, right? That's a lot of freaking 90 degree or greater turns, okay? Yeah. And then the 455 actually has 8, but it also had the same size oiling passages as the 215, 7/16. So it didn't matter how many turns it did or didn't have, it only had 7/16 pickup tube in it. And in 71 they corrected that, but the sad part is it's only the pickup and the suction side of the pump. Coming out of the pump, it still goes down to 7/16 and next down to 7/16. And then you got 6 turns to go at 7/16. So it never really improved much. But that's one of the things that I always fix on all the Buicks that Shane and I talk about incessantly is oiling mods. Because if you can pull all of that parasitic loss off of just turning that oil pump, right? That is horsepower going out the crank.
That's right.
Yeah. So, and that's what we do. Is like I open up all the passages in the timing cover. Essentially, if you do, if it's a 5/8 pickup, I'll make it a 9/16 passage all the way through the entire pump and radius all the turns and cut as much out as I can to make them function. And so much to the point that you're sweating if it will work. Right. But that's the whole idea, is to get as much oil to the number one cam bearing, because then it's just going to get worse from there. But there's nothing I can do further down the line, really.
Hey, do you remember? I got a question here on my Slant Daily Garage Yahoo.com. Do you remember how many weeks ago we talked about ported vacuum versus full manifold vacuum on a vacuum advance? Do you remember how many weeks ago that was?
It had to be 2 to 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Whoever posed that question, I'm not going to give up your name because he said he wanted to be anonymous. We talked about this. It was actually one of our hardcore tech talks. So you can go back and look at that. But I'll give you a little summary of it really quick. For me, I prefer the ported. I've tried the full vacuum. I believe for me that it works. I can get a really good idle, because everything's performance for me, performance oriented. If I have something that has a stock cam and I'm looking to get mileage out of it with a stock style cam, I would probably go for the full vacuum at that point. But for me, because I always have cams that have overlap, and I'm putting a little bit of at idle, a little bit of pressure back into the intake manifold, I go for the ported. So that way, once there's a draw through going through, then I'm starting to pick up on that. But that's just how I do it. I can tune them either way. I've had better luck with the porting as far as mileage goes with my setups.
I'll talk about the basic understanding of this thing, right? When you do full ported vacuum to a vacuum advance, the second you start the car, that thing's all the way advanced. Okay?
Yep.
You can't drive it around more than what your timing will allow, right? So, like I know on my junk, the Buick stuff is like 12 degrees initial. You want to have 32 to 36 total at 1800 RPM. But generally, the rule of thumb is as fast as you can get it there, right? Now, where the vacuum advance works off of the ported is when you're going down the road and you already have your initial set at 12 and you're full in at, say, a 32 or 36. When you're going down the road and the vacuum is you're not under any load, you're not giving it fuel, you're just cruising down the highway, the vacuum level on ported vacuum goes up to, like, say, 18 inches of vacuum. And it'll then turn on that vacuum advance, allowing you to have, let's say, 9 to 10 more degrees of advance in there. So you're at 42 degrees of advance. And what it's supposed to do is you're supposed to have the carburetor set to where it's supposed to be lean. You get that 42 degrees of advance in there. With the lean mixture, it allows it to burn slower, right, across the chamber and still maintain going down the road. And that's what happens is you lean it out so much with the timing advance so much that it'll cruise down the road and get decent mileage.
Yeah.
And that's how those things work. And you really got to work on the cusp of it. Now, if you had to hook it up to straight vacuum all the time, you could never achieve that extra 10 degrees of advance. So there's no point in even having it, because that whole thing is to push your timing up beyond its normal setting.
Yeah. Well, here's the well, I guess what you can.
I guess it would work. The mechanical advance then would add the 10 degrees.
Yeah.
But then
yeah,
you got to be
exactly.
doing a ton of RPM.
Well, here's the thing with it, though, is that because you're at idle, it comes down to really the idle or off idle characteristics. Is because on a full vacuum, let's just say you can turn down the idle circuit even more, because let's say you have 10 degrees of initial and then your vacuum has got, like, say, 15 in it, right? So you're at 25. But remember, at idle, you can really run that thing really, really lean. So you can turn down the idle screw way down, and then you can literally almost shut them off, and you'll get the best mileage there. It's still going to RPM at the same, but because it's so advanced, that's and it's running lean, that's what works. And then the second you stomp on the throttle, the manifold pressure is going to go away.
That's right. And it doesn't matter at that point, and it pulls the 15 degrees out.
It pulls the 15 degrees out, so then that way when you're driving down the road, it would act just like a ported one once you're off the throttle. So basically, it's really
Here's
comes
the
down
thing
to
I've always found with it, though. I've always found that they run super hot when you run them to ported or to full manifold vacuum.
Yes, but that's on something that's hopped up like we do. But if it's completely stock, like I was going to do an experiment on Lisa's car with full vacuum on her car to see if I can get better mileage out of it the way it sets with full vacuum, because it's bone stock and that thing's pulling like 20 something inches of vacuum when the thing's idling. So it would probably work great on something like that. On a stock car where especially on a Slant 6 where it's only got, I think that thing's got 2 degrees of initial timing in it. So you'd be at about, say, 17, which would probably be almost ideal for that kind of car because it's only 8-to-1 compression.
I tell you what, whatever works for you, right?
Yes.
But I've always done ported.
Agreed.
And that's because the Quadrajet literally has a port for the vacuum advance. It literally is labeled as vacuum advance port, and it's ported.
Yep. And that's the thing, is that you can, basically what it comes down to is you can tune them either way. For me, I prefer the ported one, just because of the camshafts that I choose and the way I like to tune my cars or my engines. I prefer the ported one, but you can technically do it either way. If you have a big camshaft, though, just be careful that if you're running full vacuum, because you will have issues.
Yeah,
you're
low
have
vacuum.
and you'll have problems because of it.
Yeah, that's a lot of the reason why people just eliminate them when you start talking about cammed up cars, right? Is because your vacuum advance might not even function because it needs a certain amount of vacuum for it to work, right? You're going
Yeah.
down the road with a big, like a hog ass cam, right? The big 3/4 race cam flipping around in there. She's only pulling maybe 10 inches of vacuum. Well, that factory engine would have pulled 20, right? So your vacuum advance isn't even functioning the way it should.
Here, this this is the correct. And there's another two people. Um, Ported versus manifold. Vizar says manifold. Uncle Tony's Garage says ported. Shane says ported, and HRA says
Question
get
mark.
Vizar to Wednesday to duke it out funny. Here's the thing: is that I can go either way on this. It really comes down to the way you want to tune your engine. For
Your timing
me,
curve.
I prefer ported because it's just easier. It's an easier way to tune it. And if you decide to go with a camshaft or hop ups later on, it's easier to tune that way, and there's less funny business happening, because what's going to happen if you have a big camshaft is that your vacuum is going to go away and it's going to be jumping all over the place, so your timing is going to go over, and so you're going to have this big surging mess. See, with the ported and you have a big camshaft, you can just basically dial it to whatever you want, and then if the timing doesn't come in on your mechanical and say 2500, it's always the same. It's always going to be 11 to 15 degrees, so you'll never have any problems. Whoa, man, we're only 5 minutes away.
I know, yeah.
Wow. Wow. I couldn't see that. So
Dizzy. Okay, so there is one is below the throttle blade, one is above.
one would be kind of like on your, imagine your vacuum for your brakes. It's got constant vacuum.
That would be
Ported
below.
means- yeah, it's
That would be
below
your-
the throttle blades.
right.
Ported is above, so the second you give it some throttle, then it starts getting vacuum. So if
Vacuum.
it's getting vacuum on it. That's really. Here, we got time for this last one. Go ahead and read it. I'm gonna drink my tea real quick.
I didn't think this is a question. Found my weird traction bang was leaving the lights. Rear springs were buckling in front of the rear end and stretching out behind the rear end. Body was jumping up, then spinning the slicks and grabbing. Oh. So it was, I don't know what you would call that. That's a Mopar thing, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that's a leaf spring car thing, right?
Yeah. Well, on a, if you're running super stock springs, you should run a pinions number, and with the pinions number, either if you're driving on the street, I always tell people to leave about a half an inch. If it's at the track, preloaded, so that way it's a half an inch down. So that way, because you use the body, okay, and the way that the springs work on
To
those.
keep the pinion from rolling backwards.
Yeah, actually, the pinions number hits the bottom of the car, and actually pushes like that. So that's why you'll see on a super stock the car
they lift
lifts
up in the rear, yeah.
Yeah, so it uses the weight of the car to push the tires into the ground. So it's a really bitchin' setup.
Yeah, there you go. Axle wrap.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's it. Axle wrap.
Exactly. And then, so with super stock springs, we'll cure that by putting from the axle forward, they stack like 10 springs or something like that. And then in the back, they've only got one or two going back. So it allows it to extend. So, wow. 3 minutes left. Anything you want to plug? Anything you got going on?
I don't have anything I want to plug. Let's see. Oh, I see Technician Troy here in the chat.
Yeah.
Technician Troy. If you aren't subscribed to Technician Troy, you should go over there and subscribe to that dude. That guy was so stand up at No Name Nationals. He got in every freaking racing event that he could. So, I mean, that dude was a stand up guy. He pretty much took advantage of No Name Nationals and having fun. Everybody got to meet him. Everybody liked him. He was a good dude. So get over there and subscribe to that guy if you haven't.
Yeah. And the only thing I'm going to say is that Friday night, go over and check out John Wilburn. I'm not sure who he has for a guest. Put it up here. But it's Friday, 7 o'clock Central Time on John Wilburn. He's always got some cool and interesting people over there. So go check that out. That's awesome.
When he doesn't do people, he has cool and interesting topics.
Oh, that's right. Cool and interesting topics. But he does have people on there too, right?
Yeah, he does. And then he has cool and interesting people, like you said.
Oh, okay.
But if he doesn't have a person, if he doesn't have a person on that night, he has a cool and interesting topic.
Yeah, yeah, and there's always people stopping in. If I'm not really doing much on a Friday night, I'll just jump in there too. So it's like kind of always like a free for all. It's always like a free invite. So, but anyways, we're just a minute out. So other than that, thank you for everyone for stopping by.
Yeah,
Thanks
and
for
hey,
supporting the channel.
I know that there's another Wednesday night tech talk now, so you guys are the best. That's why you're here.
That's right.
Hopefully, we provide you something for nothing. If anything, just entertainment of a couple of guys that know way too much about dumb car stuff.
Exactly. That's exactly worthless knowledge. So,
Yes.
but thanks again, guys. And once again, if there's a question you didn't get to, slantdailygarage@yahoo.com, send it over and we'll get on it. So, other than that, you guys take it easy. Have a good week, and we'll see you guys next week. All right.
All right, we're out.
Yep. And